Static members of a class. We can have static data members and static member functions inside a class. A static data member is a variable that is shared by all objects of a class. A static data member is declared inside a class using the keyword static. Here you can understand how static data members work. Once we make a data member as static using the keyword static, then all the objects of a class share the same variable, and even if one object updates it, then this updated value is shared by all the objects, and no object can have its own copy of static data members. Let us discuss a few key points about static data members. First is that a static data member must be defined and initialized outside the class definition, even though it is declared inside the class. And secondly, they can be accessed using the class name or through any object of the class. Static member functions. A static member function is a function that belongs to the class itself rather than to any particular object of the class. As the name suggests, it is a member function which begins with the keyword static, and it can directly access other static members which include static data members and static member functions, but it cannot access non-static members of the class. Just like a static data member, a static member function is also defined inside the class using the keyword static. So earlier we had seen how a static member variable is shared by all instances of a class, and then if we have a static member function, then this member function can also access this static member variable. Let us understand static members of a class through this example program. Suppose that I have a class named my class, and inside this class I am having an access specifier public. Under this access specifier I declare one member variable as static. Let's call this variable as count, and this count variable will keep track of how many objects of this class I create. So as I keep on creating objects, the count will keep on increasing. For this purpose, I am creating one constructor here, and this constructor is a member function. So inside this function I am going to simply increment the count by 1. So I write here count plus plus, or you can write count equal to count plus 1. So let me type here that this is a default constructor. Alright, in the next step I am going to create a member function, and this member function is of static type. Let's say the return type is void and the name of the function is countVal. It will provide me the total count of objects created. So here I will simply type /n number of objects of the class is equal to, and then I will type here count variable. Now it's time to define and initialize the static data member. So I will once again type here int, and then I will type the name of the class, which is my class. Then I will type scope resolution operator, and then I will type the name of the static data member, and then I will initialize it with value 0, because initially I don't have any objects of this class, so the count is equal to 0. So what we have done till now in this program, we have created a class called my class, and under public access specifier we have defined one static data member using the keyword static, and we have called this variable as count, which is of integer type. We haven't initialized it because static members must be defined and initialized outside the class using scope resolution operator, as we have done over here. So we have initialized it outside the class with value 0. Inside the class we have created one default constructor that will be executed every time a new object is created, and count value will be incremented by 1. Then we have defined one member function which is of static type, hence it is a static member function called countVal with return type as void, and inside this function we are counting the number of objects of the class and displaying the total count of objects. Now coming to the main function of the program, we are going to create objects of the class. So the class name is my class. Let's say the first object is obj1, and after this we are going to, as soon as we create this object, obviously the default constructor will be executed. Then we can access the static member function, which is countVal, using the class name. No need to access it using the object name, because static member functions can be accessed using class name. Then we create another object, let's say my class obj2, and then once again we call this function using the class name. And note that the static member functions always access the static data members. We cannot access a non-static data member inside a static member function. Finally, we are going to create one last object. Let's call it as obj3, and here again I am typing this statement, my class countVal. So let's save this program and let's run it to see what is the output here. So you can see the first object is created and number of objects of the class become 1. Then the second object is created and the count is increased to 2, and after the creation of the third object we have the count as 3. Let me make one change over here. Suppose if I create this object and after that I access this count variable and change its value to suppose 10. Let us see what is the value that is accessed by these objects this time. So let us run this program, and this time number of objects of the class using the first object becomes 10. For the second object, after the execution of the second object, number of objects is incremented by 1 and 10 becomes 11, and similarly after the third object's creation this value becomes 12. That means only one copy of static data member is shared by all the objects of this class.